Jimmy Butler was never supposed to be in the NBA because he was actually homeless. You see, as the sun set on the streets of Tomball, Texas, a young Jimmy Butler dribbled his way towards the local basketball court, determined to prove his worth after being abandoned by his mother and father. Little did he know, this unassuming court would be the birthplace of a superstar. Because at 13 years old, Butler's dad abandoned his family with literally no warning, leaving him and his mother behind. Since Butler looked so much like his father, who some think could be Michael Jordan, but more on that later, his own mother couldn't stand it anymore, telling him, quote, "I don't like the way you look, you gotta go," and kicked him to the streets.
By 13, Jimmy was out on his own, bouncing from couch to couch.
As a young kid, Butler suddenly found himself without either of his parents, forcing to figure out life on his own with no guidance. He was bouncing between different friends' homes pretty much all the time, but whenever he couldn't find a place to stay, he would just sort of roam the streets, which ended up being somehow the first step into potential stardom. See, Butler hated the Texan heat and couldn't stand being stuck outside with nowhere to go, so naturally when he found out that there were public indoor courts that had air conditioning, he picked up basketball just to stay cool. He quickly became one of the top athletes at his high school, and in his senior year, he befriended a man named Jordan Leslie, who became his best friend and let him stay over pretty much whenever he wanted.
I mean, I was always like, man, you can stay tonight. My mom won't care. And then I'd just be like, oh, just one more night. And it just kind of developed into a week and then a month.
Just one more night became a reoccurring event, and eventually Leslie's mom invited him to just move in. Now with a stable home and place to sleep, Butler could start looking towards the future and his dreams of making the NBA. At the time, he was clearly a great player, but there was a problem because dominating in junior college didn't really mean too much. If he wanted to get far, he now needed to compete with some of the best young players in the country, which he got the opportunity to do so after he was recruited to Marquette University on a scholarship.
I thought that he would potentially end up being the difference maker.
He was a bench player who didn't really believe in himself until his last season, where he came out with a chip on his shoulder and played like an absolute madman. He carried Marquette into March Madness and cemented himself as a possible NBA candidate. Then that year he declared for the draft, but there was a huge problem. The draft class of 2011 was one of the craziest in NBA history, consisting of people like Kyrie Irving, Kawhi Leonard, Kemba Walker, and Klay Thompson. Butler was worried that he would never be drafted and that his career would come to an end right then and there. That night, pick after pick, his name wasn't called until the very end of the first round when the Chicago Bulls took a chance.
30th pick in the 2011 draft, the Chicago Bulls select Jimmy Butler.
Butler had finally proven to himself that he was able to do it, which he actually talked about in this interview, which made for a super wholesome moment.
I proved myself right. I could care less about proving them wrong. I wanted to prove to myself that if I said I could do it, I put my mind to it.
From a 13-year-old with no parents and nowhere to go, not only did he graduate from university, but also ended up joining the NBA and becoming one of the best current players in the league. Ever since making the NBA, fans have pushed forward theories that Michael Jordan could have actually been Jimmy Butler's father, saying that he bears a striking resemblance to him, but theories actually go even further.
Jimmy was also born on September 14th, 1989, near Houston. 9 months before he was born, the Chicago Bulls played the Dallas Mavericks, which is just a 3-hour drive to Houston, and Mike had 3 days off before his next game.
Obviously, this will probably never be confirmed, but if you think that Jimmy Butler is the GOAT,